Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Happiness Index is creating a culture strategy with Vivobarefoot. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of the Happiness Index. We are an employee engagement and happiness platform where we measure essentially how your people are thinking and feeling. I'm here with one of our most amazing and cutting edge customers. I will let them introduce themselves. Ash, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ash. I head up culture at Vivobarefoot and work very closely across the whole ecosystem. I'm looking at kind of our people strategy and how we bring regenerative leadership to life in our business.
Thank you, Ash. Val?
Hi everyone, I'm Val. I'm leading people at Vivobarefoot. I've been in the company for around 2.5 years, and I take care most of all the HR function, well, traditional as it can be in Vivo.
Brilliant. Thank you. I am Matt Phelan. I've written no title because Val, Ash and I couldn't agree what to call ourselves. So we just put down the areas that we look after, and we may even chat about job titles and whether they're important or not in a bit. So let me come out of the presentation so we can get everyone back. So here we go. Let's max screen it. And just for those that don't know, can I go to you, Val, to just give us an intro into Vivo? Like, what is Vivo? Like, just that start point, please, Val.
Well, if you don't know, you would say that Vivo is a shoe company, but actually it's not only that, absolutely not. Vivo is a natural and health brand. So we are helping people to connect to the natural world, to be more healthy, and to like really reconnect with their health through living barefoot, so like through wearing our shoes, which supposedly they connect to the nature because of the old barefoot science that there is behind. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the second part of the question, Ash, I'm going to put to you, which is, can you just talk us through your values? And the second point is, you mentioned it when we were doing job titles, regenerative business. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, instinctively, I'm like, I want to be working at Vivo. I like the sound of it, but what are your values and what does it mean?
So our values, as our culture and Vivo does, changes quite often. We are a very fast moving business. Val and I struggle to keep up. Let's start with regenerative business. So sustainability still is quite a hot word, but sustainability in its simple form is you can't take anything if you don't put it back. So one in, one out, one in. Regeneration is saying if you take something out, you've got to put back in something that is much more than what you took out to basically regenerate that system. So let's say you've got a farm, instead of just, farming wheat, you've got to actually now create within that farm ecosystem a thriving biodiversity of birds, plants, water, insects, and a whole animal kingdom. So it's really taking full responsibility for that whole system that you're working in, as well as how you interact, like your farm, for example, how its chemicals, if you use chemicals, actually have influences on the water, which has ramifications onto other farms. So it's really taking a very adult and mature, responsible kind of outlook on who you are as a business and the effect you have in the world. Our values as a business, so it's an interesting one. So we are kind of a group of crazy entrepreneurs and wild people. So we do like to be outdoors quite a bit. So our 3 values are move more. So there we're looking all about trying to inspire continuous improvement and trying kind of to celebrate and get outside of our comfort zones. So we always say we like to dance to nature's rhythms. And that for us also is around kind of having fun together and connecting. Walk the talk is our second one, which is all about keeping things quite simple and almost just whatever you say, really showing up with that from a place of kind of leadership. And again, celebrating failure as well as wins and celebrating feedback. So we're a big feedback culture. We certainly aren't there yet, but it's very much one of the key avenues for us. And then thirdly, it's being an outsider. So that's stepping outside your comfort zone, and as we like to say, rejecting the cushioned life. So really challenging the status quo.
Can you say that again? I like that. I've not heard that phrase before.
Which one?
Rejecting what did you say?
The cushioned life.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I want to pick that out for our listeners. I think there's going to be people writing that down and saying that in meetings this week.
Yeah, so that translates obviously other shoes that aren't barefoot. So for those who don't know, barefoot shoes are very, very thin like a very thin sole, very wide, so your toes can splay, and very flexible. So you can actually roll our shoes up like this. Whereas the traditional kind of Nikes or Adidas or any other kind of shoe is quite cushioned. And so obviously we say reject the cushion life to go barefoot, but that's also around rejecting sitting on a couch and kind of our sedentary lives that really aren't doing any good for our health, which connects back to what Val was saying about us being a natural health brand. We've kind of very much pivoted away from just being a shoe brand and looking at the whole picture.
That's such a good description. And I want to talk about the beginning of your culture journey, but I also want to share the story of how the Happiness Index and Vivo started working together, because it is unique in a way, which is, firstly, when we had our first meeting, Mark, who is on the finance side, and Galahad, your CEO, both came to the first meeting, which doesn't always happen. You don't always get people in a finance function coming along, and you don't always get the CEO there. So straight away we were like, okay, this is important to them. And that made us even more wanted to work with Vivo. The second thing that happened is there was never a presentation. So we had prepared our presentation, which we would always prepare, but the laptop never came, the laptop never opened. We just had a conversation about your culture and what you're trying to achieve. And then we were put in touch with Val, and we talked about like the mechanics of how it could work. And I just wanted to share that with everyone, because you don't necessarily have to go down the traditional route of getting a company to come in to pitch. And we just found that so valuable. Even though we'd put time into a presentation, we actually preferred to just have a coffee and a chat about how we could work together. So that was our kind of like intro into your culture, that journey. But how did it, could you talk us about how that your culture journey began at Vivo? Is it right at the beginning? Does it come in later as you've scaled? Like, yeah, a bit of an open question there.
Val, do you want to take it?
I started I think the cultural journey started a little bit when I started, which was around like maybe 3 years ago or 2 years and a half ago. I think that like Ash was saying, there was the importance of being a sustainable brand, of course, but I think the sustainability is looking always like outwards, like, you know, what kind of like material you use, you know, your supply chain and blah, blah. And then Galahad met Giles Hutchins, who is the author of an amazing book called Regenerative Leadership, recommended to everyone who hasn't read it. And they started having conversations about actually how do we make this step forward, and from like sustainable we get to regenerative. And I think that that's when like Galahad also understood the importance of like looking inside within the system. So like trying to create a culture that wasn't toxic, that was like happy for everyone and so on. And so interesting, because like what you said, like they met with you, the people team didn't exist back then. We didn't have a HR people team. So finance was kind of like, you know, working within the people realm. And then I joined. I was the first person from the people team that joined. So I basically started with you guys. And then slowly, I think we kind of like decided that everyone should be involved into the regenerative leadership movement. So we involved all of the people, every single one of the people at Vivo, to go to Giles and talk about what it means to be regenerative, talk about hits in the system, trying to solve things, you know, with your help, of course, you know, through the surveys. And then slowly but surely things improved. And then we got more members in the people team. And then I think Ash started, what, 9 months ago? Or like more, I don't remember.
A year and a bit.
Yeah. So like when we decided that really we wanted to focus more on the culture and, you know, like really dive into what it means to be live barefoot. And so, yeah, it was like, I think at the beginning, maybe it was a bit rejected to think about the culture in that sense. I think that, you know, because the company was small, it was easier in a sense to be old friends and like just do things as they were running day by day. But then obviously at some point you need to kind of like decide, okay, you know, we're gonna really focus on this now, because otherwise it's gonna be chaos. And so yeah, that's what happened.
So just to build on that, go on, Ash.
Also Galahad, this has always been something that is so close to his heart, is having a business that is much more than a business. He's never really cared. Obviously, we need to make money, etc. But it's so close to his heart to create something that's innately human. And that yearning is actually what's allowed us to build what we build, because of his belief in that. And Matt, it's classic Galahad to come along and, you know, throw the presentations out the way, because let's be honest, it's quite boring.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's very formulaic, it's very hierarchical. He and we prefer to just arrive full heart, open heart, let's just have a conversation. You get a feeling for someone that way, you rumble a bit and then you go, yeah, it feels good, let's go ahead, or no, it doesn't feel. So we definitely are more of a culture, kind of an open-hearted culture.
And I'm going to give everyone a triggering warning here, because for people that don't like feet, but I just want to show everyone something. This is the Vivo Barefoot like financial report. It's called Unfinished Business, and it's triggering because not everyone likes feet. So I'm gonna remove it now. But
our new one has a leg with some
leg. Okay, cool.
So
and there's probably people who don't like what legs look like as well, isn't there? So you can never keep everyone happy. But what's fascinating, so this is, I'm just reading, it's the financial accounts CSR report annual statement. And it leads into my next question, which is, this is a public report that everyone can read. You can see the happiness index data around how happy employees are, but the plans for the company in the financial report. Now, traditionally, this is a really boring internal document that no one ever sees. But this document here is, anyone can Google it. Even if you just Google Vivo Barefoot finance report, this will come up. But what's fascinating about this, I think myself personally, I've probably shared this report maybe at least 100 times with people, because people say things like, oh, you can't put happiness in the board report. And I say, well, you can. And I send them examples. Sodexo, our biggest numerical client in terms of employees, 450,000 employees, they do it. Vivo are doing it. So you can. But what I find fascinating here, and it leads into the question, which is, how have you embedded a true listening culture using the happiness index? Because the output is what we're seeing there, is that report, isn't it? That's like almost the finished piece as you're moving along. But can you talk us through like the steps to get to something like that? Because I send it to people and they want that. They're like, oh, that's what I want to do. But I imagine it's not, it's probably best to start with you, Val, coming in at similar time to when we started working. Where do you start? Like, you get your first happiness index data back. Like, what do you even do?
Actually, there is a whole cross-functional group every year working on the reports. They start like much early. So the report comes out in November, December, and they already start 1 year before to work on this. And each of us is involved. All of the system is involved. Like every circle and sub-circle contributes somehow. So obviously, like the happiness and engagement, data is important, because for us, I think we wanted to do things differently, even in how we communicate to the external world. And also we believe in transparency. So, like we want to be fully transparent to people for us to see. Otherwise, we need to walk the talk. So we are going to be transparent for everyone to see, and we're going to be transparent internally. So we really wanted to show everything that is going on in the business. And we really wanted to show that it's a journey and it's a work in progress. And we haven't finished, so that's why it's unfinished. And I'm not sure that if there's going to be a year when it's going to be finished business. I don't think so. It's always going to be unfinished. And it's just like a way to say, okay, look, this is what we are trying to do to become better, to become more regenerative, to do things better. But it's a lot of work, and these are the steps that we are taking. This is where we are not good enough yet, but we want to be. We would like to be. But yeah, it's a huge work of like all the company, I would say, getting together and just like contributing and, communicating very cross-functionally. Yeah, it's exciting to be part of it.
And I suppose a question, go on, Ash, you had something to add.
I was going to take a different angle on this one. The true listening culture for me is, it's an interesting, I'm actually writing a chapter in Giles's book, his new book, Giles Hutchins, and we're trying to tell our story, which is quite topical. And how this shift happened was that in the woods with Galahad and Giles, we started having these sharing circles. We put people into cross-functional teams, because you're wanting to tell the audience how. Yeah. We took away like departmental silos, and we just put people into kind of relatively random teams that we would take down to the woods and have kind of these sharing circles to go for walks in the woods, have topics, and literally almost have a talking stick. And that started creating more of a culture of trust and the ability for people to start sharing openly. And then through that, people started to see, the head of finance, the director, and our job titles have changed now, but director or whatever was a human too. They didn't sleep last night because their child wasn't, sleeping, or they're also feeling stressed by whatever. And that started creating more of an openness. Whereas before we were quite egocentric and kind of quite degenerative and hierarchical. And with that shift, that openness, we were then able to start sharing. And then we started putting people in more cross-functional teams. So we're in these almost, we call them yin meaning more soft and feminine, these yin circles, which are these pods, which are sharing circles. And we did a lot of learning. Giles helped us, and we still run the pods today on what regenerative leadership means for us, and almost having these coaching sessions. Then we started with other cross-functional teams, which were mission-based or project-based teams that were trying to solve a problem. So you can naturally, we're a really entrepreneurial culture. Everyone's got really lovely ideas. And so people could spontaneously come together in what we would either call a speedboat, which is like a small, less than a year project to go. Like, for example, our shoes didn't fit at all. The sizing and fitting online was just terrible. We're having so many returns. So we had a team come together from across the business, people volunteer to come in. We have a lead. We had a small core team of 4 to 5 people, and then an advisory team around the outside. I can also talk more about why if we want, but that's how it worked really well. And they would then deliver on these missions. And that again created more conversations, more networking, especially during COVID, when people were even more siloed. Right. And they were almost like more at their own little laptop. And we were such a team of like camaraderie, etc. This started creating more conversations. That also, again, helped the shift towards being more open. And then through that, again, this humanist theme came through, this vulnerability, this courage, this compassion, these themes. And that then allowed us to go, okay, well, now we're at a point where we can start asking people how they really feel, which we did start before, but we started seeing those changes with the happiness index. So Matt, you've obviously seen the work that Val's done before me, incredible work from, not really good scores to where we are today, which is mostly to do with Val. I've just kind of ridden along for the last year. And that shift and that measurement is something that we dive into quite a lot. And we've also, Matt, we're changing the way that we also interact with happiness index this year, because before Val and I would just do a presentation to the team, really be guts and all. This is what we're doing well, and this is what we're not doing well, and share the whole report. Like, we just give it all, and we summarize it for those who are time poor. But we're actually going to run little training sessions with each department, what we call Home Circle, and kind of go, guys, this is a deep dive into your team. This is what we're seeing is really good, and this was not really good. This is also now some of the Live Barefoot stuff and culture stuff that we're working on, and this is how it ties to that. So they can start understanding, okay, we're getting this feedback, we're doing something about it, and really so the teams feel that we're hearing them and we're actually doing something about it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And there's about 3 points I want to follow up on there. So on a listening strategy, like we were saying, Val took for some scores that weren't great and improved them. There's that like Mike Tyson quote, isn't there? Like, everyone has a strategy until they get punched in the face. And I always think everyone wants to do a listening strategy until they hear things that make them feel uncomfortable and can sometimes not be what you want to hear. Because everyone can read in a textbook, like, it's good to be a listener, I'm an open door CEO, all this kind of stuff. And it's all said and it's all great. But then the first time people get stuff that they don't want to hear, there's a natural tendency for some people to put their fingers in their ears. You haven't done that. Can you help anyone listening that is going through that first point when you hear stuff? Because we hear stuff at the happiness index we don't want to hear all the time. You do, every company in the world does. Hear stuff about their culture that is negative. There is no company in the world that has 100% happy employees. But Val, maybe you could help us understand how you take that stuff and how you use it and move forward with it.
Well, first of all, people that are listening, if you are in the people function, don't take it personally. It's not your fault. It can happen in any companies, and happiness fluctuates. I think one of the most important thing, and Ash mentioned this before, well, the people at the top, well, in this case, our CEO Gala, who is amazing, need to be 100% on board with wanting to create a culture that is like, you know, based on like the human, the people, where we want to build trust and so on. So definitely people, team, and, you know, CEO need to go on the same path and work together, because obviously, you know, even in a company like ours, when we, you know, talk about self-managing or non-hierarchical stuff, there is always a CEO, and the company, the decisions are made mostly by the CEO. So like, it's important that there is a path where, you know, we work together to really change things. And then also, on the other hand, you need to include all of the people in the changes, and you need to make them understand that they are being listened to. So, you know, the happiness index or something like that is just important, because you are showing people, okay, you know, we are listening to your opinion. And then after that, you need to kind of like do some actions, even if they're like small, just something that shows them like, okay, we're trying to do this, bear with us, give us some time. It's not going to be like easy. It's not going to take 1 month. Maybe it's going to take 3 years, but like, we're trying. And be transparent and communicate this like as much as you can, like regularly. Even if you haven't done things, be like open to admit that, okay, look, we haven't solved this yet, but we are working on this with, like, you know, this and that. So like, open communication, work with the CEO, and like, yeah, small little actions, and involve the people into the change. I guess these are the 4 most important elements to like, yeah, move forward.
That's really useful, Val. Ash?
Yeah, always wanting to talk. It's an interesting one, because I think you can't just dive in. If you take a traditional hierarchical business, and I've worked in many, there are a lot of egos, there's a lot of hidden agendas, there's a lot of, I was in water polo, you know, and you like take people and you like put them under the water, you know, it was you trying to get ahead. And that's generally part of a corporate culture, because that's what we're trying to do, is achieve and get profit and get sales. So for me, it's also starting before you get to this place where you can have and give good feedback. You have to start sharing. And that's what I was saying earlier. You have to open that vulnerability piece. You've got to start getting people to see each other as humans, giving each other the benefit of the doubt, and allowing them to be, it's not going to take a while to take, you can't take your full mask off immediately, like your work mask, as Brene Brown says, or whatever, take off your armor, I think. But you've got to start getting people to show up with more gentleness. Otherwise, this doesn't really work, because you still have these people that are trying to deliver and they just don't get it. Yeah. And so that for me is really, really important. And then the other thing is training around these things. So feedback, for example, we still haven't got right. But we're getting better, and I still need to do a paper and some training, which Val's actually leading with all of our, we call our managers evolution leads. Can get into that at another stage if we want. All of the evolution leads the tools in order to help their teams, and giving and receiving good feedback is one of the most important things in a self-managing and a vulnerable, honest, open culture. So again, it's giving those people those tools when they're ready. So it's almost like the state of readiness.
Yeah, that's absolutely massive. And just there was 2 other points I just wanted to drill down before we go to the next question as well. You mentioned regenerative, but then when you were talking, Ash, you mentioned you were having some degenerative. I think you said conversations. I don't know if you did or not, but I just want to pick up on that point, because I got that regenerative was sustainability, but we've increased the bar, right? I understood that point. What when you reference, I can't even say the word degenerative. What were you talking about, Ash? Like, what were you referring to?
Anything that's not regenerative. So i.e. anything that's not inspiring thrival in any place. So it's basically simple, going backwards and being a bit mean or gossipy or hierarchical, or anything that basically isn't good in a regenerative business.
Got you. And the one thing I cannot walk past here is, again, and this is what you will see Ash and Val do this. They do so much advanced stuff, they just take it for granted. You just randomly dropped in that you were all in the woods having a chat as a leadership team. Now, some people go and do that like every now and then, like they might do it once 5 years. Sounds like you lot go to the woods a lot. Can you actually talk us through that? It's not in the questions, but there's people listening and be like, I'm sure Ash said something about the CEO being in the woods. So Can you just talk us through
Yeah.
that? Because I know it is really important to you and it's not just a one-off thing that you've done.
Yeah, so we actually have a London home. We call it a home, not an office. At the moment, it's in Clerkenwell and Britton Street, and it's going to move to Neal Street, just above our retail store. And then we have a nature home. And at the moment, we're looking for a permanent one, but we have actually paired up or kind of collaborated with Giles Hutchins, and he has a beautiful Springwood, kind of a Springwood is it East Sussex? It's a beautiful venue that he's kind of started consulting from, which we now borrow 2.5 days a week. So we're actually in a permanent agreement with him. There's no contract. It's all based on good faith. And yeah, we take teams down. So like Val and I'm in South Africa at the moment, but I'm coming back to the UK in a couple of weeks. Val and I will go down and have a day in the woods and really just have a chat, talk about strategy, talk about projects, and just align. We'll talk about also our feelings, like how our working life is like. We'll take teams down. So if there's some degenerative behavior in any of the teams, or heat, as we call stress, or just miscommunication or angst, we will take teams down, and Giles will help facilitate us having those open-hearted conversations and going, what's actually the matter here? How do we let go of our trauma and move forward? And then Galahad or the CEO or any of the round tables, we call our directors, they will go down fairly often on their own. So we actually do kind of solo camp outs in the woods, literally with yourself and your sleeping bag, and that's it. And then also kind of the roundtable get together every month for 2.5 days, so 2 nights and 2.5 days. And they do almost board meetings, for lack of a more Vivobarefoot word. And they've just actually come away this morning from one. And they were at Springwood yesterday, and they were somewhere else the day before. So it's multifaceted in terms of what we use that for, but generally it's strategy, big conversation, sensing in, and really kind of talking from the heart. I hope that answered.
No, it does, Ash, but it creates another question that I've got, which we're getting totally off the questions here, which I suppose Val is, so I get that, right? They're all important things that need to be done, but someone will be thinking, but why do you need to do it in the woods, right? Because all those things that Ash described are great. Can you sort of bring it to life on like why actually taking the effort? Because it's effort, isn't it? You could just do that in London. Like, what is it? Like, why do you find doing it down there at that location? There must be a benefit. If you could just talk us through that, Val, that would be really useful.
I think the answer is why not? Like, as a business, the main value that we have is reconnecting people with nature. So like, why would we have to go into like a meeting room for an afternoon and spend like an afternoon talking about like whatever we have to talk about, or having coaching sessions in a room where it's dark and like, you know, just there is no air, when we can do it outside in the beautiful woods where there are like deers passing around, you know, when you hear the birds like singing. First of all, I mean, I think that people that have never done it and they would want to do it, they would realize that it's amazing how you think straighter when you're like in a place like that. It's like calm, quiet. Plus you put away your phone, you put away your laptop. There is absolutely no distraction from technology. It's just like a place where you can really like be yourself and talk and like really think straight and relax. And like, I don't know, it really helps. So it's obviously it's part of like what we are as a brand, encouraging people to go into nature. So it makes sense that we are doing it. But I think that when I say to my friends or like other people that I know, I'm going in the woods, there was a time that I was going in the woods every week. People were just like, are you even ever at home? Like, you work in the woods. Wow, it's great. But it is great. I think that many more companies should think of doing this as a thing. Like, even like if it's like once a month, a team brainstorming, it does make the difference. Like, really, you should try.
No, I'm a big, the reason I ask is because I started in customer happiness data, and that led me to employee happiness data when I followed it downstream. And the more I look at the macro employee happiness data, the more I follow it to downstream to nature, and both nature and environment, and both types of nature environment, as in the environment and the environment that you work in. So no, that's just amazing. I'll get back onto the actual questions now, but thanks for sharing.
Matt, yes. One on that. Sorry, always got a comment. There's a reason why Canadian doctors are now prescribing time in nature.
Yeah.
Like, when we are in, I've got some kind of fake wood around me and concrete, right? When we're in rooms like this, the vibrational energy is quite different to being in a live where there are birds flying past, there's wind, there's trees. It has a calming effect. And so, and often in the woods, we're having big conversations about strategy or really tough conversations about teams not getting on and stress and etc. So it creates this calming thing. Another thing about moving, I don't know about you, but if my boyfriend and I are having like a bit of a tricky situation, I don't like sitting across the table from them, like in a boardroom like this, and talking about my feelings, or like, it's hard. Like that's too much. If you walk shoulder to shoulder, I often find a car journey because you're shoulder to shoulder and you can like look around and then look at each other, or a walk in the woods. You're moving, and so your energy can move as you're sharing, as you're talking, your body's moving and the energy's like moving around you. So everything just flows better. And so you come away from it feeling enriched, feeling deeply connected to the people, to the place, to the company. And instead of it being a transactional going into a boardroom, yes, you tick the strategy box. It's this rich experience.
No, I love that. I've always interview people by going for a walk with them, and I've always found that is a better way. And I struggled with that in the pandemic when you have to interview like this. I even read a thing that you're supposed to sit side-ons a little bit, because if you sit face on, that's like a threatening thing for each other. Like the fact that it's like you're basically trying to have a fight with the other person, which Zoom automatically makes it do. Anyone that's interested in any of this conversation, check out The Hidden Life of Trees. It's such an awesome book. Check that out. But right, let's get on to the question. So we talk about your community, and we've talked about your community a bit there. We're widely part of the sort of people and HR community, and there'll be lots of people listening here. For us to regenerate with the HR community, what are your key learnings from sort of working with a happiness index and the data that we can share with the HR community?
Val, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, key learnings. I think that what I said before, it's exactly summarizes the key learning. Like, you know, like always make sure that the people that you're working with are listened to, that you're giving them a voice. I think the happiness index does this perfectly, even with the employee voice, tool. But also like making sure that it's not just a tick box. Okay, now we have this. Yes, you can write whenever you want, and we're just gonna park this. You need to show that you're actually really doing something about it, even if it's just a small thing, or even if acknowledging that you're not doing anything about it, but you will. Just making sure that, you know, the people are not only listened to, but they feel that they're part of like the change. And yes, I think it's interesting, like for us, the employee voice, when we first started, it was like huge and everyone was like commenting there, I think because people were really unhappy. Now we have like more particular comment, or just like based on like specific topics, but we take them as soon as we have them and we share them like with the wider team and we talk about them. So I think it's really important always to make people feel that they're part of it, just like not, like nobody's listening to us. Yes. And then I think as well, working with the CEO is super important. They have to be on board on the journey. Otherwise, as much as you can listen, or as much as you want to be progressive or evolving, if they're not on board, then, there's only so much that you can do. Ash, do you want to add anything else?
Oh, yes, I do. Surprise. Matt, we were actually talking about this yesterday or whenever, and I said, it's not a journey, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And it's never going to be finished. It's always going to be unfinished business, but that's okay. Like, we're trying to rewrite the rule book and we don't really know what we're doing. Like, I don't come from a culture of people or CIPD or any sort of background. Like, we're just trying to figure it out. And actually throwing the rule book out and just going, we're going to commit to the journey is the best way of doing it. And going, okay, there are many holacracy, sociocracy, regenerative business, teal organizations, whatever. There are millions of things that we can look at. Great, go and read the textbooks, like get some context. But then go, what is your ecosystem? Like, is it still really hierarchical? Then we're saying, well, then you probably need to do some open sharing circles and start there. Or actually, are you like us? We're quite far along the journey. And how do we adapt and change what's out there, look at our system, and then also completely innovate as it comes through? Because you're going to take a few key themes, but you have to innovate or die. Because if you copy and paste something that works in, I don't know, at Netflix or at Birdsong or at anywhere, and put it into Vivo or any other business, does not work. Like, doesn't work. And so that's really important. And the other thing I found incredible is asking, I've said about feedback, but asking and giving feedback. Why? Because what we do as a team affects everyone in the business.
Yeah.
We've just updated our evolution guidelines, which means our progression and development PDPs policy. So we don't, sorry, I'm trying to translate it back into normal speak. And that directly affects everybody, how they're paid, rewarded, remunerated. So ask people, hey, this is what we're thinking. I shared a document with like highlights in my own comments and with the whole team going, literally the whole Vivo team, 100 of us going, what do you guys think? Asking for feedback. People then feel like they're part of the process. And obviously you can't take everything into account. Someone's going to be like, people are going to be on either side of the extreme. That's okay. But at least you've opened it up and they always will have some really good ideas for you. And that comes from us being able to be like, we're not experts. We're vulnerable. I don't have an ego. Like if somebody has a better idea than me, it's all great. Blooming marvelous. We can, implement that. And then also it allows us quite quickly when I'm doing something wrong or not perfectly, or we never want to be perfect, but if they'll kind of will call me up and be like, Ash, why did you do that? I'll be like, yeah, right, that was great. And it's timeless. So I can move and grow and develop quite quickly because I'm asking for and giving that feedback. So those are my
sorry, just one quick thing to add. Like ask your people. Like I think that sometimes, especially if you work in a more traditional company, maybe people feel a bit triggered of like including other people that are not part of your department into the work. But actually, it's a blessing. Like you don't know how many people have opinions that could help your work, especially in HR, especially because HR is a topic that everyone is interested in because they're living it. It's about them. It's about the people. So I think since we started working cross-functionally, has been amazing for us because we get a lot of feedback and great ideas that maybe you don't think about it because I don't know, you don't think about it and another person does. So it's awesome.
And it's perspective, isn't it? Like someone working on something from one angle that's looking at it this way, someone who comes and looks at it from here just looks at it completely differently, and that's really amazing. There's been a big storm in the B Corp community with the story around Brewdog, which I won't ask you to comment on. But I think the reason I raise it is because I find it fascinating because I don't want to get into the technicalities of that, and we don't work with them. But as I said at the beginning, I've never met a company that has all their employees that are happy. So it's natural that companies are going to have unhappy employees, and sometimes they will talk about that publicly and sometimes not. What I think fascinating about Vivo and Barefoot, and I'd love an update, Val, on where you are with that, because we're going down the B Corp route ourselves, is that when I look at the B Corp framework, you're actually more advanced in some areas than the B Corp frameworks. If you take how they analyze their people score, I think it's every 2 years or every 3 years, whereas you're doing employee voice, so you're checking in on your people every second, 24 hours a day. I just loved, last time we had someone on from Vivo, is Galahad. By the way, it is Galahad, is his real name. It is a real person.
And his dad's name is Lancelot.
Yeah. And I'm just laughing now. I can't even remember what my question was going to be. But we'd love an update because at that point, Galahad had just announced it. And it seems like a natural fit, B Corp, for you, but you are already doing lots of the stuff. So how's it going? Is it a terrible experience? Is it been good? Just give us the warts and all, please, Val.
Okay, I am in the group that contributes to the B Corp work, but I'm not 100% into the people that are working through the certification. I think it's obviously a positive experience because it means working towards that it's making things better, and also there is a huge community that you can rely on. All the companies that are going towards the B Corp certification, they have a kind of similar mindset, so it's nice to have this kind of contact and network where you can talk about things that you're doing. It's a lot of work, a lot of work. And I think that sometimes it's easy the cons are first that it's easy just to tick stuff, just to say, it's like a tick box, it's a B Corp, when it shouldn't be like that. I think that in theory, you should, as a company, already think about doing things, not because, let's tick the B Corp tick, but just because, you want to really do it, or you want to change it inside. So I think it's tricky to fall into that. And also like B Corp is an American, it's like an American subscription. So sometimes it's difficult because the questionnaire are based on like American companies. And so sometimes it's tricky because in UK we do things slightly different. And I have to say, you mentioned this before, but there are some very traditional things in there, like specifically in HR, which we sometimes don't do, not because we don't do, but because we do things so much differently, or we are really doing the next thing. And it's like, okay, we can't really tick this, but not because we're not doing this, but because we're doing it completely different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's just like, but I guess in general, like it's definitely interesting and it's good. It's just, it doesn't have to become something that, okay, you know, we need to score like to 130 now, let's just focus on that and let's do this only because of that. It needs to be part of like the whole change journey, I think.
I think we've only got 4 minutes left, and I think that is the bit that last bit, Val, is a real capture there for the audience, which is it needs to be part of what you're doing anyway, rather than an add-on. So I've got 2 questions that I need to get out in like 2 minutes each, because we've all got a hard stop. So I'll just ask them really quickly. You've been working on some really exciting stuff around hybrid working and reward. Can someone tell me in 30 seconds what this really exciting stuff is?
Hybrid working. Well, as you can imagine, we like connecting. You can feel from us, we like meeting in the woods and connecting. And everyone I spoke to in various kind of HR and people forums, I was trying to like figure out like who's doing what, asking people like literally borrowing or stealing somebody's idea. And everyone was going back to the office on certain days of the week or certain times. And I was like, this doesn't work for us. So we just threw the rule book out, didn't we? And we prioritized what we now call connection days. And we've come up with a minimum of 24 connection days per person per year. And that's broken down by your department. Obviously, you have a different name for your department, your cross-functional team, your actual sub-team within that department, and then us actually as a whole Vivo ecosystem. So that's broken down there. And then evolution. Gosh, this one's a really tough one. We have tried to simplify things, but also keep them quite personalized, because we believe at Vivo that everybody has their own journey, and we're here to look at your whole self. So we break down things into probably two different types of categories and areas. Number one, self, circle, and system. So how are you operating within like Ash? How am I delivering on my work? How am I working within my circle, which could be Val and I working in the people team, or other cross-functional circles that I work in, so mission-based kind of projects. And then how am I working within the Vivo system, as in across the whole system? And then that also then goes out into kind of external suppliers. So Matt, for example, how do we work with you? Am I showing up really kind of in a good place and delivering results? And then the other thing is, the other kind of piece is yin and yang. So yin being the more how we show up, how do we make people feel? Is it from a place of courage and compassion and strength? And then the yang, which is all around delivering impact, which is delivering on KPIs, doing our job, moving the dial. And what we've done is created a very personalized or kind of very Vivo-ified version of a personal evolution plan. Happy to share it with anybody who wants to have a look at it. Matt, I think I actually shared it with you this morning. And that's going to be the key lever that we will help people progress, is are they delivering? And there's going to be a little bit of agreement on when pay triggers will be and what that could look like. And then outside of that, we aren't a bonus business, because we don't believe in putting the stake so far in advance, kind of 14 months in advance. You've got to say, we commit to X, because we change so much. The world changes, we change. And so we just felt we'd be letting people down. We put a stake in the ground and said, we've got to kind of get there. But we have created what we call kind of a personal allowance top up. So at the moment, we have £1,000 that we give to everybody to basically spend on themselves in their personal lives, in what we call living barefoot. So it could be massages and pedicures, it could be learning a new sport. I learned to kite surf, for example. It could be doing any sort of course that you like. And we are allowing people to celebrate each other by giving people more top-ups of that. So it could be another £1,000, it could be another £5,000. So we're kind of topping that up ad hoc to celebrate our teams. And then we are also committing to we all grow and go up together model, where for all salaries every year, we will commit to some financial, non-financial KPIs that will increase all of our salaries, either everybody or nobody. So that we all are basically, as a system, kind of trying to move together in that. Kind of goes against what I first said in terms of creating a pigeonhole in the sand, but we've taken three quite simple measures that won't change, like customer happiness. We're never ever going to not want to please our customers. Our B Corp score, that's a whole business thing where we are we all working together to that? And then we've done profit, because we have to earn profit in order to do what we do. And specifically, as you can imagine, not on turnover, not on just selling more shoes, but in creating more cash to go into our Live Barefoot fund. So a percentage of that goes to our Live Barefoot fund, and obviously making sure that we can pay salaries and do a lot of the work that we do.
That's amazing. We've got 34 seconds. We're going to change my last question to be a one word answer. What does an amazing culture to work in feel like for both of you individually? Ash, if you can go first, just like one word, like what does it feel like?
Whole. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Val?
I think trust.
Brilliant. We've got 11 seconds. Thank you. I'm going to wrap us up. One of the number one things we get asked at the Happiness Index, and I'm not just saying this, we get asked for Happiness Index awards. All our customers want to do Happiness Index awards so they can put our logo on stuff. If there was a Happiness Index award, you guys would definitely win it. We just love how much you chuck yourself into this and make it part of your culture. So on behalf of the Happiness Index, just want to say thank you for working with us, but on wider our community that are listening in, thank you for sharing what you're doing, because it is making a difference to people's lives. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to share with us.
Anytime. Matt, and if you're happy to share I think you said you had a book that you recommend to everyone, we can share a link to our latest Unfinished Business and the Regenerative Leadership book, maybe in the chat or somewhere, so that people can have that after the podcast. And Val and I are open books, so if anybody wants some advice or to rumble together on the problems of trying to solve culture strategies, we don't know, so come along with your ideas.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care, Matt.
Bye.